Thank you very much, James, for joining us this morning. And in the big picture, China has been really trying to warm up to some of the pro-West economies. And we saw that with, of course, South Korea and Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and now Malaysia. What would be really the key focal point going into this three-day visit for you?
So the key focal point is that they're celebrating half a century of diplomatic relations, but there are several outstanding issues that the Chinese would like to push for. As you mentioned in the introduction, they like closer economic relations. So basically, the Chinese thinking is that Malaysia is a really, really important country for a very simple reason, geographical reasons. Things are hotting up in the South China Sea, and the only country in the region that straddles both sides of the South China Sea is in Malaysia. That's number one. Secondly, I think China is hoping to get back on track several of its key economic projects that it's trying to push very hard. The East Coast Railway line, but people often forget that major Chinese companies are also big players on the Malaysian property scene. So, for example, we know that one of the largest Chinese companies involved in the construction of an artificial city called Forest City off the coast of Johor. And this is highly significant because the Johor Sultan is now the king of Malaysia. I suspect he will also issue an invitation to the Johor king to visit China as part of his visit. But basically, the main focus of the visit is the diplomatic relations anniversary, but he's hoping to push for a higher economic cooperation between Malaysia and China. I think the Chinese are very clear that they want to push Malaysia closer to them simply because for the last 50 years, Malaysia has been closer to the West.
Right. James, this is JP Ong. Diplomacy or diplomatic relations are key, but and we did speak to Trade Minister Tengku Zafrul Aziz a few weeks ago where he said that he believes Malaysia can remain neutral and friends with both China and the U.S. But do you think this is becoming a trickier thing for Malaysia to balance, given the fact that they depend so much on both China and the United States as a major source for trade that also drives the Malaysian economy?
So the idea of maintaining neutrality is what the Malaysians call strategic ambiguity. They don't exactly come out to say they support the West, neither do they come out openly to say they support China. A lot will depend on what happens to the South China Sea. As long as things are quite quiet in the South China Sea, I suspect Malaysia will be able to maintain its ambiguity. But if something were to blow up in the South China Sea, I suppose Malaysia will have to take a harder stand. The reasons why Malaysia doesn't want to take a strong stand against China is because the governing elites in Malaysia believe that, we have lived under the Chinese shadow before colonization. There's no reason why we can't live under the Chinese shadow going forward. So they believe that due for historical reasons, they've always been managed to deal with the Chinese, and there's no reason why going forward they can't deal with the Chinese.